In 2019, I made a vampire movie in my living room. No crew, no budget. A few years later, I remade my own film. This time with professional actors, a crew, an original score, also a lot more money. Most filmmakers adapt their short into a feature. I adapted my short into another short. Why did I do that? Well, let's get into it. Like a lot of creative people, I can sometimes be obsessed by the next idea, the next script, the next movie, the next shiny object. But every once in a while, an old idea refuses to get out of your head. That's what happened to me with Thirst Trap. I'm what I would call an iterative storyteller. I've done this since I was a teenager, in fact. I used to write and direct one-act plays in high school. I wrote a one-act supernatural thriller called Sculptures that won a playwriting award, and I had the opportunity to workshop it and restage it in a new production. And then in college, I actually adapted that into a student film. It's bad, but we all got to start somewhere, right? And ever since then, I've always enjoyed using my own ideas as a way to experiment with new formats and new resources. It's a little bit different from revisionist filmmaking. Like, famously, George Lucas went back to Star Wars and redid some of the special effects. I understand the temptation as a filmmaker to do that, and I think that's absolutely his prerogative. Speaking for me personally, I don't like to go back into old work and reopen it. I like to take that and do a completely new version, almost like a new draft. So for this particular example, let's rewind to the end of 2018. I was freelancing, I was between projects, I had a little bit of extra time, and I wanted to make a movie. I didn't want to spend a lot of money, and I didn't have a lot of time, so I had to find a framework that would fit my resources. I've always loved vampires. For one thing, they are indisputably the sexiest monster. Honestly, I could spend an entire video talking about vampire mythology and the queer allegory. But long story short, I've always loved vampire stories because every generation has a new spin on it. There are lots of ways that you could take vampire lore and kind of make it your own. How long until sunrise?
Sunrise will be at 6:27 a.m. today.
I'm also a photographer. I love shooting on 35mm film. I was intrigued at the idea of a vampire who's been around since the dawn of photography. A lot of the earliest photography, in fact, was self-portraiture. And it occurred to me that a vampire who had 2 centuries to master the craft of photography would be really, really good at taking selfies. He'd know exactly how to look at the camera and arrest your attention. Also would be extremely adept at self-presentation and blending in. As a gay person, I also wanted to explore the allegory of hookup culture. So that was the spark, and honestly, that framework helped everything click into place. I shot most of the film in one evening, all the wide shots and close-ups, and then I spent the next couple days shooting insert shots, like hands and devices. I also had fun getting into character. I bleached my hair. I have my friend Ryan to thank for that. I attempted to put in green contacts and made a video about it, and let's just say I was unsuccessful.
I just read a WikiHow article. I'm gonna try and recreate the steps. Okay, they said to relax your eyes. I am not relaxed right now.
Basically, I just started filming. I kind of wanted to make it documentary style, where it's mostly available light. I had some cool neon, like bisexual lighting going on, but other than that, it was just me and my phone. I probably spent a month or 2 on post-production, just kind of like fitting that into weekends. And then it went on the festival circuit, and it was actually pretty successful. While the film was on the festival circuit, I met up with a writer named Joe Barnathan. He really liked the concept of the short, so we ended up co-writing a TV pilot. That was a lot of fun because I've never written a pilot before. We outlined a whole season of television. We put together a pitch deck. It didn't really go anywhere. Hollywood, baby. I'm still really proud of that script, though, and a couple years later, I had some budget set aside for a creative project. I was itching to direct something again. This is post-pandemic, so I hadn't directed anything since the first Thirst Trap. When we were writing the pilot, Joe's friend James Scully read it and gave us some feedback. He really liked it. James had just been in the 2nd season of the Netflix series You and was also in the film Fire Island. Very different characters. In Fire Island, he was like this puppy dog boyfriend, and in You, he was pretty twisted. I knew from those 2 roles he could find a balance in this vampire character, Nicholas. So I asked Joe, what do you think about taking a few scenes out of our pilot and making another short? We asked James. James really liked the idea. The caveat is that James, as a professional actor, is in the Screen Actors Guild. I had never produced a union production before, so I had to learn. I brought in my friend Madison Holland, who I've collaborated with on a bunch of projects, including my most recent film, Rathbone. She and I just jumped in, and it was a trial by fire. We were learning as we went along. We figured it out. This version had a second character played by Chris Renfro. Chris had recently appeared in Queer as Folk on Peacock. It was a reboot of the Showtime series. The original Showtime series was a very foundational show for me. It basically taught me how to be gay. The reboot's fantastic. Chris is fantastic in it. Chris and James knew each other, but they had never worked together before, so that was a lot of fun. They had great chemistry. They were both great to work with. The crew was phenomenal. My DP was Noe Chavez, who is one of my favorite collaborators. We worked on a docuseries together. One film that we referenced heavily for the look and feel was The Neon Demon. He had never seen it, and so I asked him to watch it. And this is where having a really talented collaborator can level up your production. After watching it, he pointed out that some scenes seem to be over-cranked. If you're not familiar with that, over-cranking is basically shooting at a higher frame rate, and when you slow it down, it's slow motion. He told me, I think it's 35 frames per second. So what he did, and this was amazing, he sent me a camera test. He did 3 different clips of just some simple motion of him in his apartment. Lo and behold, the one at 35 frames had this really cool ethereal quality that didn't quite look like slow motion, but it looked a little bit uncanny. And it was such an interesting creative choice that I never would have done on my own. Our gaffer was Rachel Hastings, and our key grip was Cliff Horn. Both of them phenomenal. My favorite shot in this film is this iconic moment where James is behind the camera and his eyes are illuminated like Bela Lugosi in Dracula. In fact, I literally wrote that in the script. When I came to set that day and they had set up the lighting, it looked really cool, but it wasn't exactly what I imagined. It occurred to me that maybe not everyone has Bela Lugosi's Dracula seared into their imagination, so I pulled up a Google image search. I showed it to the team, and immediately it was like a cartoon light bulb went off. They split off in 3 directions, and they started gathering materials, and probably within 15 or 20 minutes, they had assembled this like weird-looking rig with tin foil and like all this other stuff. And then they pull up the monitors, and we get James on camera, and it's exactly the look that I want. I was absolutely flabbergasted. It was so cool to see them in their element and like creatively problem solving. They could just look at an image and they knew how to execute it. The whole production went really, really smoothly. These days I run a pretty tight ship. I like to end on time. I get through the shot list. The crew really appreciates that because you respect their time. We never went overtime. In fact, there was one day where we actually got through the shot list a little bit early, and that gave us time to play. We shot the entire end credit sequence in that time, and that was so much fun. We tried a bunch of stuff. We played with different camera motions. There are these fantastic shots where the water is dripping off of the photos, and it looks like a tear. That happened twice. Everyone who watches the film asked me, how did you do that? And the answer is, it was completely unintentional. In fact, I don't even think we noticed it on the day. It was only in the edit that I found those moments, and I was like, oh, that is cool. All that to say, everybody on that entire team, 10 out of 10 would recommend. Actually, one other thing I'll mention is that we found a photographer here in LA that specializes in tintype photography. So we did an authentic tintype photo. It was really cool to be in the studio and watch it. It's almost like a giant Polaroid. You put it in the solution and it almost instantaneously appears. In the first version, I mocked something up in Photoshop, but this was the real deal. Post was pretty straightforward. It was actually my first film working with a composer. That was Becca Shack, who I would later collaborate with on my latest short film, Rathbone. She wrote a beautiful score for Thirst Trap, and in fact, it's streaming wherever you listen to music, so check that out. Well, I mean, that's pretty much the whole story. It's a tale of 2 thirst traps. I have no idea what the moral of the story is. Actually, I think I do. It's that even by revisiting the same idea, you can still level yourself up. The first version of the film was a great exercise in self-sufficiency and playing in a small sandbox. And the expanded version, I learned a lot, not only in terms of creative collaboration, but the administration of a professional production. In that one, I was able to kick it up a notch, not only as a director, but as a producer. Maybe someday we'll finally make the full pilot. Maybe we'll turn it into a feature. Who knows? In the meantime, the entire 2023 short film is available now on YouTube. I might put the 2019 version up at some point, but for now, if you're gonna review it on Letterboxd, make sure you pick the right one. Subscribe to my channel for more filmmaking tips, and I'll see you next time.